mean to get the backstory? It means asking the hard questions and getting to the heart of what matters about your mental, spiritual, financial, and physical well-being. In my quest to find wholeness, wellness, and end the 40 years of obesity that ravaged my body, I found that it was my own stories that were keeping me trapped in processed food addiction. Once I started asking the right questions, those same stories led to brand new consciousness, mindfulness, and agency. Each month on Get the Backstory Live, we take on the tough questions so you can find the healing, hope, and transformation hidden in your story.
Hello there, and welcome to Get the Backstory Live. I am so happy and excited and just delighted that you decided to join us tonight. My name is Michelle Petties. I am your host, the host of Get the Backstory Live. And if you haven't joined us before on Get the Backstory Live, we are going deep. We're going deep inside these health issues that are important to all of us, right? So that we can find more peace in our lives, more joy, more freedom, more confidence. And if you haven't watched before, my story is that I struggled with obesity for most of my adult life, from the time that I was 20 until the time that I was 60 years old. I gained and lost over 700 pounds. But in that process, and finally finding peace and learning how to manage food, gaining mastery over food, and more importantly, gaining mastery over my emotions, the thing that I found that was critical and key for me was writing. The root of my work, the root of everything that I do is based in writing. I conduct workshops to help people get connected to the emotions and the feelings that they have around why they eat what they eat. I call healing through reading, writing, and storytelling. Because all of that helps us get connected, and through connection we're healed, which is why I'm so excited about the show tonight, because we're going to take a deep dive. We're going to take a deep dive into the power of writing combined with the power of devotion. And I think it's especially important for us to talk about this, not just as it deals with issues around weight, but this is October. This is October, and it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And it's a time when women especially are concerned about self-care and what that means. And so many times we hear that, self-care is going to get my hair done, get my nails done, right? Getting a massage, going out to eat, right? But there's some other things that are involved in self-care that sometimes get overlooked that can be so, so, so important, which is why I'm just delighted to bring our next guest on. Our next guest is Dr. Kimberly Sims. She's going to be joining us from Houston, Texas. I want to read you a little bit about Dr. Kimberly and set the stage for her and talk about this wonderful devotional that she has written, Her Cup Overflows. Let me read you a little bit about our guest. Dr. Kimberly Sims is the author of the devotional journal, Her Cup Overflows, which offers readers a chance to reflect on their spiritual journey through daily devotions and journaling prompts. Dr. Sims' work is deeply influenced by her background in education and her passion for helping others grow in their faith. She is also involved in various ministries, and her writing seeks to inspire and uplift women, providing them the tool to deepen their relationship with God. And so often we know that our path to healing, right, is when we have a purpose and we can believe in something bigger than ourselves. And with that, Dr. Kimberly Sims, come on up and let's get this conversation flowing.
Hey, I'm so excited to be here and have this conversation. It's so important.
Oh, thank you for making thank you for making time in your schedule, because I know doctors are going coming, going and coming. I mean, you're a doctor with some little kids, so I know you're squeezing me in. So I was able to tell the audience a little bit about you, but tell tell the audience that which I didn't share. Tell tell
Oh,
tell,
goodness.
tell us that we need to know about Dr. Kimberly.
Ooh, okay, so let's talk, because I'll tell you what's on paper, just a little bit of what's on paper, because I do think it gives some background to what this devotional really was about and where it came from. So on paper, I sent my mom my resume. It's actually my CV. That's what we call it, in the professional kind of academic world, your curriculum vitae. And I sent it to her because someone asked me for my bio. I hadn't updated it. And she sent me back a text message and said, "Whew, you've been busy." And so I will tell you guys, I was a primary care physician. I'm obesity medicine specialist. I moved into that sphere now. I have been faculty to residents. I was a clinic director. I started a post-discharge clinic. I've written books. I've given talks. I have led committees on state professional boards. I'm involved nationally in my professional organization. I've received awards for my professional organization. I check all the little boxes that you can check because that's what I knew to do. That's what I knew to do. I have my 2 little boys and my Doberman. I got, your 2.5 kids and your husband, and I go to church. Check all the little boxes. But what this is really about is that I am human. I am human. And back in 2018, the Lord saw fit to show Dr. Sims that she was human and that she needed to learn how to take the advice that she was giving everybody else. And so who I am is also a human being who has learned that living in my authenticity and slowing down and taking care of myself is important to me being impactful, to me living in the way that God wants me to live, and to me touching people the way that God wants me to touch people. And if I don't do that, then I'm not living to my fullest potential. I can check all those boxes all day, but I'm not living to my fullest potential.
So, what happened in 2018? You knew that question was coming.
Yes, indeed. In 2018, I had a 6-month migraine. 6 months. I started having migraines in 2012, and they weren't that bad at first. Had my younger son in 2017, and he was starting to wean from nursing, so wasn't nursing quite as much, and so my hormones started fluctuating, my migraines started getting worse. But I actually got in a car wreck that in hindsight was the catalyst for my migraines becoming so much worse. But I tell you, I got in this, it was like a little fender bender. I got in my car. My MA was the first person I called, mind you. Got in this fender bender, called my medical assistant first to let her know I was going to be late because I was in a wreck.
Wow.
And then got in my car and went to work. And I was trying to make my burnout meetings because I actually started a physician burnout committee.
Wait a minute, you had just started a burnout.
I started the physician burnout committee.
Okay.
I'm having this horrible migraine, and I did end up having to cancel it because for the first time I was like spinning and nauseated, and I felt horrible for having to cancel it. Mind you, this is the physician burnout committee. I shouldn't feel bad for taking care of myself.
Right.
And I did not stop until, because this was on a Monday. I didn't stop until that Thursday when I was literally spinning and feeling so nauseated. And I had never felt like that before. And one of my colleagues literally was on the phone with me and said, "No, I'm going to call your husband. You're going to go to urgent care because you've never felt like this before." So it took one of my colleagues.
So you were burnt out and didn't know it. You were burnt out and didn't know it. And second of all, it sounds like you were getting messages early on
Exactly.
that you couldn't hear or didn't hear or ignored
That's
or
exactly right. Because from there, my doctor told me to take off. I told her no. It wasn't until I was 40 days into this migraine that I sat down and I said, if I keep going like this, I'm going to kill myself or somebody else. And that's when I knew something had to change. And I didn't even want to take off work then. I went to my administrator. I was like, maybe if I have 3-day weekends, I'll have more time to sleep and the migraine will go away. And she looked at me like I was crazy. I was like, girl, if you don't sit down somewhere, that is not going to fix it. So she is the one that was like, no, you need to take off.
So where do you think this need to just want to keep driving and pushing and grinding, no matter what the circumstances, where that comes from? Maybe not just in you, but maybe even people that you've counseled and talked to before. What's at the
Women
root
of
of that?
color. Let's talk about women of color.
Okay.
We all do this. We are conditioned not to show weakness. We are conditioned that we have to get it done, that we put ourselves last, that them people can't see me fall. And we are conditioned to ignore ourselves as if we're not human. And then you put women of color in places where they are not traditionally. So I'm in white man's world. I'm in medicine. They can't see me break.
So there's some fear. There's
There's fear.
fear.
You're moving in fear, not power.
Mm-hmm.
And you think you're operating in power. I'm strong. I'm pushing through. But what you're really doing is moving in fear. It took 3 or 4 people telling me to sit down before I finally sat down. And I had to be out of work for 8 weeks.
So Kim, I want to go back. I want to go back to what you just said. You think you're moving in power, but you're actually moving in fear. Can
Yes.
you just unpack that a little bit more? Because that's something right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, think about it. I just came off of a wellness workshop, I'll say. I am involved in this amazing leadership program. I was selected with 30 women physicians to be a part of a leadership. It's Wellness Through Equity and Leadership is the title of the program. And so we just had our wellness series. And one of the physicians said, I spent all of my life people pleasing, and now I'm more concerned with disappointing myself.
Mm.
And to that, I add disappointing myself in God, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because when you're doing all of that, you are not concerned. You're too focused on the external. You are fearful of what that person's saying and what that person's thinking but you haven't stopped to consider what God has put in your heart, what gifts God has given you, what God is saying to you. You're too busy moving and thinking about what everybody else is saying to even hear God speak.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of why he will sit you down however he has to.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to hear him speak.
Mm-hmm.
Because
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it was in that 8 weeks that he spoke to me. And that this devotional was written.
Okay, that we're in the same page. That's where I was going. That
yes.
Is it through devotion, through this devotional and through the writing is how you hear God speak.
Absolutely. Or it wasn't written all in that 8 weeks, but it definitely started there. Yes.
So I heard this someplace, and maybe you can tell me your thoughts on it. I heard something, and I may be paraphrasing it, and it was something like, it's like when you pray, it is when you are talking to God, but when you are meditating, it is when God is speaking to you. It's when you are allowing God to speak to you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are writing, what would you say you're doing when you're writing, when you're in this devotional space?
I really feel like that's a part of taking the meditation and making it physical. Like you're really taking those lessons and those words that are coming to you and putting it into the physical place and making it concrete. And this is what I'll tell you about this devotional. After I wrote it, or honestly, I didn't write it as a devotional. I wrote it as a blog.
Oh, okay. All right.
I wrote it as a blog. And then I was going back through and I said, oh, this is a work. That's what the Lord was doing. Right. And so I put it together and now I go back through and I read it and I say, this was for me. It's my reminder. I don't know who else it's meant to touch, but it is certainly my reminder of those messages that I was getting through meditation. But part of the writing is so that you don't forget. You don't have to go back and relearn those lessons.
Yes.
You know, because you will forget.
Yes.
I will just open it up and I'll be like, oh, I needed to hear that today.
Part of the writing is and I get it. I get it because we all have these books that we read them and then we go back and read them. And because this, life is not one and done, right? And the opportunities to the opportunities to move through the lessons, they keep coming back, right? Right. They keep coming back.
Every time you think you learned it, you're gonna be tested.
Yes, you're gonna be tested. Yeah, something comes up. Yeah, you think you know, but do you really know?
Yes.
Yeah. How about this? How about this? Yes. So what was I know you said you started it as a blog, but what was your process? I mean, what was your thinking? Can you
So I will tell you, I was in the dark. There was actually a period there was the first 4 weeks and the second 4 weeks. That second 4 weeks, there was a period of about 10 days where I was in the dark. And that was a very dark place. And that was where it was really like a conversation and a choice of like, what am I going to do? And really coming to terms with who am I? Because I've always defined myself as XYZ, but who am I? And being reminded of gifts and things that I've forgotten. And I was really reminded that I'm supposed to be writing. I'm a writer. You're supposed to be writing.
Yeah.
And that's where the blog was born from, was out of this reminder that you need to write for healing. And so the blog was, honestly, it's never really even been a great big thing. It was truly just therapy. And so these were my soulful Sunday writings that I would just go through the week. I would have these mindful moments or these things that would happen to me, and I would write this soulful Sunday post.
So can you are there some particular ones that resonate with you? That particular
all of them.
Well, okay. Of course.
I just open them and pick one generally. Let's see. Whew. But see, some of them are long.
Okay.
Oh. See, no, they're just all, because I lived them all, they're all so precious to me, right? There's one called, and I can just give you.
I mean, you don't have to read it, or you can read a piece, or you can read a portion of it, or you can just tell the story of how you came to write it. Tell the story of how you came to write it.
Called Valuable, for instance, that came to be because I was going through this very, very low point. Because mind you, after this migraine, I walked into a season of trials. this was a season of growth for me. And so I hit a very low point that had been building for a while. And what happened was I ended up getting cake, and then I got an award, and then somebody called me to tell me just how much they'd been touched by me and how much I deserved whatever recognition. And it was just back to back to back. I think I got some flowers. And so all of that is talked about, and it speaks about how he's always watching, and he gives you exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. And how precious you are to him. Because we always think, oh, he's great big, and we can only ask him for big things or the important things. But he sent me cake. He knows the number of hairs on your head. So it's really thinking about just how valuable you are to this great big God. There was one that was a rainbow. And it was when I was thinking about all the things I was going through, and is this ever gonna be over? And it reminded me of the promise. And so that was what that writing was about, I don't remember what that particular one is called, but it really was about just these moments that I would have, these moments of clarity that I would have around his presence in my life, and around what it was telling me about who I was and who he was and what our relationship was.
So I love you said something earlier about I was going through all these challenges, and then you said it was a real season of growth for me. So talk about how you can get to the point where you see challenges as growth and not just something that gives you a migraine.
I think it comes from embracing, right? Embracing that they're always going to come, and that's truly the purpose. Once you understand certain promises, I mean, that things are always there for your good, and you accept those things as true, well, then when you're going through this hard place, it's here for my good. Why is it? Okay. Well, let me get from it what I'm supposed to get from it. Right? Once you accept that this is here for purpose, it's for my good. But it really comes from believing everything that's written. Yes. And not listening to, the lies that are told about how, things are awful and that means he doesn't love you. No. If I accept that he does, then that means this is here for a reason.
Yes. Yeah. When you say that, it kind of reminds me of this place that I came to on my journey. And as you know, I battled, this food addiction and obesity beast for 40 years. And now I'm writing about it and coaching around it and speaking and doing all that. And I got to a point, Kim, where I know I'm living in my purpose, right? I know that that's why I was born for this.
Exactly.
And that I had to go through the 40 years of struggle to be able to be in this place of purpose. And on the other side of the struggle, it sometimes it amazes me that there's so much joy on the other side. But I had to have those 40 years to be at this point.
Right.
It took going through that. Right. I couldn't get this. I can't have this without having experienced that.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
So that, that's real, right? That's real to be able to, that experience, you're going through stuff, and when you're going through it, oftentimes you don't know when you're in it, why. You don't know.
I would say that I would have some very tangible moments because I would be asked to speak on a topic. And then in that couple of weeks before, he would take me through something that That's what I'm talking about. I even stopped trying to figure out what I was going to talk about because the Lord was going to take me through whatever it was I was going to talk about before.
Right,
He's going to give me the
right,
talk.
right.
Because it's like he's, whatever it is that you're supposed to give, he's got to give you the testimony. He's got to give you the strength. You can't speak to what you don't know.
Ooh, that is so very true. And it and I will tell you, when I'm out speaking and I'm doing workshops and I'm talking about this, the number of times that people come up to me afterwards and say, I saw myself, or I heard myself in your stories, or I have never been more seen.
Yes.
I mean, it just lets me know that this is the right path, right? That this is the right path. I'm often asked, why did you write the book? Why did you write? What prompted you to write your book? And I know you've told me as your story, and I say, I wrote my book because my doctor encouraged me to write my book. My doctor said write a book, so she's a doctor, and that's why I did it. But after I wrote it, I published it for every other person that was walking the same path or walking a similar path. So I wrote it for me, but I published for anybody else that is ready for the message.
Yes.
So how would you say that writing this journal has changed you or impacted your life? Can you talk about anything specific that bubbles up for you?
The writing makes it clear. I think that that's also part of it. It really helps you clarify the journey. And the journey, oh, goodness. The person that I am today is so very different than the person that I was in 2018. I am so much more comfortable in my own skin. I am learning to speak from my authenticity. I am learning to move in my purpose and in what in what he's calling me to do. So, because I know that that's where I'm going to be most impactful.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of worrying about, I had this great big director job and, people don't think something if I walk away from that. If that's not where I'm being led to be, if I'm not being honored, if the whole me isn't being honored in that place, that's not where I'm supposed to be. And it doesn't have to make sense because what's for me isn't going to make sense to everyone. It's for me. It'll make sense when it comes to fruition.
So Kimberly, how somebody's watching this and that phrase, if I'm in a place that's not honoring the whole me, there's a piece of me that believes that some of us, Black women specifically, have been dishonored for so long in so many places that they don't even know what that honoring feels like.
Right.
Can you kind of reverse engineer what that looks like, what that feels like, how somebody might know? Two parts: how somebody might know they're in that space, and the second part, how they might start to walk in a different direction.
Yes. So one thing, a few things. I'll definitely start with anger. We normally label anger as a bad emotion, and it's not. We don't want to act out in a bad way, but anger normally tells you when someone's crossing your boundary. And what we typically do is bury that and try to, explain it away and say we're overreacting. But no, if you are angry, someone crossed the boundary and you need to try to figure out what that boundary was and start to really investigate that. I really try to sit with my values. And so really investigating your anger, investigating when you're feeling angry at work or in life or
Mhm.
whatever, and looking at those boundaries and starting to stand in them is very important. For me, what it looked like was realizing that I had been shrinking myself in multiple rooms and that it never seemed to be good enough. So, those microaggressions of you're unapproachable or you're this or and every time I go to the next place, I'm okay. So I'm going to be even smaller. So that way I'm not intimidating. And I was like, I shouldn't have to shrink all of the awesomeness that God made me to be to make other people feel more comfortable. And I'm not doing it anymore.
Mhm.
So when if you walk in a room and you feel like you got to do this, you're
Mhm.
not being honored.
Mhm.
If you
Mhm.
feel like you have to change how you speak, what you are saying, you're not being honored. Now, mind you, there's professionalism, but you should feel comfortable voicing your thoughts and your ideas.
Mhm.
And when that's not being honored, you're not being honored.
Oh. Oh. So this what you're talking about really resonates with me, because when you're operating from this place where you're not being honored, where you feel dishonored, that puts you in a place of pain, that puts you in a place of discomfort. And
Yes.
that place of pain and discomfort, we don't always recognize it. We don't always recognize it for what it is. We just think, oh, I think give me an extra side or something, right? I'll have the pie.
There you
I'll
go.
have the, I'll have
Yes.
the, yeah, I'll have the whatever. I'll have an extra one of this, because I'm trying to cover up, and I don't realize it. I'm trying to do something to make myself feel good.
You're absolutely right. That emotional eating, but not emotional eating. And then you talk about blood pressure issues, the headaches, diabetes. All of that is stress. When you look at black women and DNA changes from stress, all of that we're internalizing. And so you talk cancer and our
Mm-hmm.
increased risk of cancer and
Mm-hmm.
all of these things, you start looking back at our stress and inherited stress.
Mm-hmm.
And then the things that we continue to compound because we are doing things like emotionally eating
Mm-hmm.
or not working out because we feel like we got to prove ourselves extra, or all of that is completely compounded because we feel like we can't be us.
Right. 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 And that being us, you know, I um I have a coaching group, around weight loss and transformation. And one of the things I talk to the people that I coach and we write about is I will share that when we're looking at emotional overeating, right? Um, before we ever gain a single pound, a single ounce, a single extra anything on our body, we gain it in our head first.
Mm-hmm.
We gain it in those thoughts. We gain it here. That's where we carry it. And we have to release it. We
Yes.
have to release it in our head first, and then our bodies will follow. And then we do that. We do that, with the writing, but we
Yes.
we do it when we feel empowered to release it, when we realize that it's trapped up there. And we can't release it unless we know that it's trapped up there. And
Yes.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that emotion, anger, and how sometimes we put a judgment on any kind of emotion, right? We
Exactly.
put a judgment,
Yes.
right? Of
Yes.
fear, shame, frustration, disappointment, all that, rather than realizing that the emotions are just data.
Yes.
Emotions are just information to help us process the world, right? To help us. We need emotion, right?
Yes.
We don't need to try to we don't need to try to cover them up or dishonor them, because they're showing up for our good.
They're showing up for a reason.
Yes,
Yes.
they're showing up for a reason. So kind of talk to me about, like, the writing process, the journaling process that you encourage people to use in a journal, in your
So
devotional.
so in my devotional, you have the devotional. So what I wrote, and then I normally ask you a question. And so it's really kind of taking the time, because stillness is so important. And we really, in our society, we just don't sit still enough. But it's really taking the time to sit still with the question and write and really think about where, in different ones, I'm like, well, where is it that you're seeing that you're not doing this? Or where is it that or where have you seen, with the one with value, where have you seen that he's shown up and taken care of you? And you might have to sit and think, but as you think, you'll see it, And so it's really being still long enough to allow the process to happen. Because that's the thing, is like stillness.
Stillness. Sit and think, right? Sit and think. And I love the notion of the questions, right? I read either I read this or I heard this someplace, and I'm paraphrasing again. I'm guessing don't get the quote exactly right, but it was something along the lines of, when we start asking better quality questions, the quality of our lives improve when we start asking better quality questions.
Right.
And do you see that? Have you seen that, or in the way that you approach your process?
Oh,
And how has
goodness.
that shown up?
Oh, yes. Now, and I will say, part of that, because I tell everyone I'm a big supporter of a good therapist. A good therapist will definitely help you with the questions to ask. And so I have seen over time my level of question elevate, and be able to really dig and say, well, why did I do that? I realized that I still had a fear, and I wasn't sure what it was. And I was like, what is it that I'm scared of? And I had to sit with it it really took a good 2 weeks of me really meditate. And I wrote down some stuff, and it just still didn't feel right. And I was writing down some, and it still didn't feel right. And of course, when you're meditating on things and you're praying on it, things will happen so that you can be shown. And something happened, and I was like, rejection. Scared of rejection. And I was so excited. I went to my therapist. I was like, look, I found it. But it's real. So it's learning to say, oh, I noticed this. That's why you have to feel the emotions and actually sit with them. Because sometimes, it may be something that you want to kind of work through and grow from. But you can't do that if you don't at least acknowledge it.
Yes. Yeah. I love, what I love about that story you just shared about sitting with this fear that you had and just trying to come up with it, and getting happy when you found out that it was rejection. I mean, that speaks so much to the fact that on this journey, as we start to discover things about ourselves, there is joy in the discovery. There's just joy in learning who you are and knowing who you are and getting connected to yourself, right? Everything is about, it's like when you get really connected to yourself, and you wouldn't normally think, this is what's so ironic about it, is that normally you would think rejection, who'd be happy about that? But to look at it through a different lens for what it really is, which is understanding of self and knowledge, that's powerful. Now,
Yes.
I love you talking about a good therapist. I I have spent thousands of hours in therapy, thousands of dollars in therapy to become this happy whole person that I am today. I was happy before, but I didn't know why. I was just, it wasn't by choice. It was by dictate. You will be happy because you have two emotions, right? You have happy and happier.
Yes.
because you can't let people see that you're unhappy. You
Right.
can't let people
Can't
see
let them see you
that,
crack.
right? And so we kind of went from the same place, so we got some of the same block. But I remember the one of the first times I went to therapy, I was so blocked that I couldn't even talk to the therapist.
Yes.
I had to write. And for session after session after session, she would just let me come in and read to her because I couldn't talk to
You
her.
could.
And I remember at one point she asked me a question, and it was a question about emotions, and I couldn't even give her an answer that was rooted in emotion. It was all logical things, right? And
Yes.
she kind of pointed that out to me. But what I remember about that, and the big lesson that I got is that when you are when you're when I was blocked like that in terms of my emotions, that that block was because I was afraid to feel certain pain. And if you're afraid to, and the reason you feel like I feel like I couldn't, um, I didn't want to feel pain was because I felt like it would be so unbearable that it would kill me. I didn't think that I would survive. But when you can't block the pain without blocking the joy. So if I didn't want to, if I could never be as happy as I possibly could because I could never allow myself to feel the pain that I'm supposed to feel. But I remember going through therapy and that session and getting to the other side and being involved in a relationship. And the relationship was moving along, nicely. And then we had a breakup. We had a breakup and it devastated me. It was devastating. And I remember going to a friend, one of my girlfriends, worked downtown DC in this big office building. I'm crushed. I go see her, right? And I'm standing there waiting for her to come out. As soon as she comes out of the elevator, I start bawling. I mean, I just like see her and I just break down in tears in the lobby of this building. And she's like, "Oh my God," because she didn't know what has happened. She just, I called her and she
Right.
knew it was. I didn't come visit her at work, but something had happened. So I'm in tears. She takes me downstairs in the, down where the cafeteria, and she's kind of consoling me, and I'm just like bawling. But I will tell you something. Even in the midst of that bawling and the deep pain and betrayal and hurt that I felt, there was a part of me that was happy.
Yes.
And the part of me that was happy was the part that said, I feel this, that I'm at a point where I can acknowledge it, that I'm at a point where I can reach out to somebody else. I'm at a point where I know that I can go through this and it won't kill me. And it was such that that happened over 20 years ago, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's still a moment that I appreciate so much, to understand that the emotions, all of it, they're all valid.
Yes.
They're all designed to give us the tools that we need to to process what's going on in our world. Um, so when you talked about that, really kind of came up. So Kim, what advice would you give to someone who wants to start journaling, who wants to start writing, but they feel kind of they're intimidated and maybe even afraid of what might show up.
So one is there is no wrong way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
There is no wrong way to do it. It's they say the same thing about meditation. There's no wrong way to do it. It's yours.
Mm-hmm.
You do it how you want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is don't judge yourself. You sit down, you do what feels right for you. But then two, I think it goes back to that whole you can't grow from what you don't know.
Ooh.
And if you're serious about your growth, and if you're serious about wanting to be the best version of you and the
Mm-hmm.
most idealized version of you, you have to get to know you. You can't
Mm.
be scared of knowing you.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And you might see some stuff that you don't like, but the good part about that is that you get to control how you grow from that once you know. As long
Oh.
as you don't know, you have no control over it, and it's just there.
So do you, so that thing about control. right? That I think that's something that a lot of people grapple with, right? And how to navigate those things that you can't control.
Right.
So, how did you kind of like come to terms with that? Can you
Well,
talk?
because I still have migraines. Actually, you want to know something? I have a migraine right now.
Ah,
I still have migraines. It's a
mm-hmm,
very small one,
mm-hmm.
but they haven't filled my medicine. I got to call a pharmacy lady. I have a migraine right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of these has to do with realizing that while a lot of people thought that my blessing was going to be having this thorn taken from me,
Mm-hmm.
I don't get to control that.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are things you get to control and there are things you don't get to control. What you get to control is you
Mm-hmm.
and how you react to things and how you grow from things and how you perceive things.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know you, you can't control the one thing that you have control over.
Oh, okay. So uh, that was a nugget. Anybody watching right now, if you don't know you, you don't know how to control the one thing that you have control over. I, mm, mm. I love that, Kim. You know, one of the oh, I love this conversation about getting to know yourself. Was one of the writing prompts. One of the writing prompts that I use in my group is I say, okay, let's go through the alphabet. Let's go through the alphabet and go through the alphabet and use each letter of the alphabet and find a word that describes who you are.
Yes.
And then I take it to another level. Go through the alphabet because I'm dealing with people that are working through food addiction and obesity, and they see and feel themselves in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Then I take it to the next level and I say, all right, let's go through the alphabet and find a word that begins with each letter of the alphabet that describes the person that you want to be.
Yes.
And that, you know, that takes people some places, because when you pull up the word, then you've got to back it up.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You gotta back it up with something. What's the story? What's the story? What's the belief? Right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the belief that has you where you are? And
That's
what's
it.
and what's the story? And what's the belief that has you want to be someplace else? You know, um, so that it's always, there's always the discovery. So I want to ask you, who did you discover that you are? Who who showed up? Oh,
Whew.
you don't have to go through the entire alphabet.
I know, right?
That's the good news.
One, I am light.
Mhm.
I had to accept that when I walk in the room, people notice.
Did
And
you
that
think you were darkness before?
no, but I also was very uncomfortable with being seen. I was very uncomfortable with it. And I'm still working through that, I think.
Mhm.
But I had to accept
Well, we're
that,
helping you tonight.
right?
We're-
I had to accept that I am radiant and I am noticed and that there is purpose in that.
Mhm.
And I've got to sit in it.
Mhm.
I own my intelligence. and my brilliance. I can't keep shrinking when I walk in rooms anymore.
Oh. And so, all right. So let me just stop right here. So you are a sister, Kimberly. Okay. So you are a sister. You are a black woman in a white male dominated field. Were there instances where you felt like your light wasn't seen, or that your light was trying to be dimmed, or
That
it was messed up, that part right
and
there?
so and not just that, but part what I realized, and I will tell you, is that because I am noticed, it's just inherently who I am. There would inevitably be the person who wanted to dim my light.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to kind of accept that was going to happen and not allow it to happen.
Ah, yes, yes.
And figure out how I'm going to navigate that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, in some instances, it may be learning how to use the diplomacy that I've learned over the years. In some instances, it may be that this isn't worth it, right? But it's really starting to own that, yes, the part of the reason you keep having some of the issues you have is because you are noticed.
Mm-hmm.
The places you go.
Mm-hmm.
Strangers do come up to you
Mm-hmm.
and say things like, "You're such a lady." Like, that's random. But this random woman noticed how I moved on vacation.
Uh-huh.
You know, so you are that kind of person. So people notice you. And when
Mm-hmm.
people notice you, that makes other people uncomfortable sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to happen. But you
Mm-hmm.
also can't dim what God gave you, because that's downplaying his blessings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I had to remember that I am loving, that I am kind, and that you can't let other people tell you what you are and what you are not. You can't let other people tell you what spirit you're operating out of. Once you get very comfortable with who you are, when people come tell you that you being mean and you being, you know you're not.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned a lot about the fact that I'm a loving person, the fact that I'm an intelligent person, that I was operating out of fear and I was a people pleaser and a perfectionist. I needed to come out of that. And I did.
Mm-hmm.
That I love helping people and teaching.
Mm-hmm.
I learned that about myself too.
Mm-hmm.
And that I really am here to help guide people in different ways. I'm a doctor. I help guide people to health, but I do more than that, because I realize that health and wellness is really about this piece too. So when we talk about getting screened for breast cancer and why people aren't getting screened for breast cancer, it's because they're really scared about what they might find out, or
Yeah.
because they're too busy trying to impress the boss and they won't take off to go get their screening.
Yes.
Or because it's all those other things, and we really need to address loving ourselves.
Mm. Mm. Yes. Yes. You know, that thing that you said about taking off, it it hits home. It hits home for me. And I think about all the years that I worked in corporate America. I worked in sales. And it is only been in the last couple of years that I've had real long vacations where I wasn't taking the work with me. For
Mhm.
so many years, especially early in my career, the only vacations I took were when there was a long weekend involved, where I could leave on a Thursday, right, and maybe only be off on a Friday, and then Monday was a holiday, and I would break it up. So those were always my vacations. Maybe a Friday or a Monday if I've got an extra day because of the holiday. Never anything like 2 weeks or 10 days or I didn't do anything. And it was fear. It
Right
was fear that
here.
it was fear that, first of all, whoever was my backup wouldn't handle my accounts like I would
Mhm.
handle them, right? that,
Mhm.
or something would go wrong with me not being there, and I would, be out of control. And I was, I was afraid. Now that I look back on it, I was always afraid that my job was in jeopardy, no matter how much I excelled at it. Now I look back and I think, that wasn't the case. But there was this thing that I carried around with me all the time that was unnamed, and then I ultimately realized that it was stress too. That
Absolutely.
fear, carrying that fear, is stressful.
Yes.
And I
But
was
let's talk, because you said something, and
okay.
I wanted to bring up some of the ugliness that you find, right? That
Hmm.
you find in yourself that you're like, ooh, I don't know if I like that. Well, when you're a perfectionist, the other side of that tends to be that you tend to judge people a little harshly. And I was like, I don't do that. And then I realized I do that.
Hmm.
And you start to realize that you need to give other people grace.
Hmm.
I was a control freak. So like you're like, can't nobody do it like me.
Right. Right. Right.
They'll be all right though.
Right. Yeah. Only I can do this. Just me.
Right.
But
You
but
know,
it, but
you
Kimberly, giving other people grace, that gives you permission to give yourself
to
grace.
give yourself grace. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
Yeah. That reminded me. I did go through that, through the, oh yeah, you're a control freak.
Yeah.
You gotta let it go.
Yeah. I mean, isn't it sometimes when you see things from a different perspective and see them through a different lens, if somebody said, it's you, you're like, no, that's not me. And then you look at it and you're like, oh, maybe that is me. Maybe that is who I am. Maybe that is who I am. So, oh my God, it's been so great talking to you. It's just such a gift to have this hour with you, to have this time with you for this extended conversation. So what I want to do is I want you to give out your information, and give anybody who would like to pick up your journal, right? Her Cup Overflows. To be able to get that, to be able to connect with you, to be able to contact you. If you want to give people the details, I want to be able to share that with them.
Okay. Is there somewhere I could share a link?
Oh, I don't. Oh, I don't know.
That's
um,
the
there,
easiest
is
way.
there a chat?
I see
Uh,
the chat. There is a chat.
okay, pop it in the chat. Pop it in the chat.
All right. So I shared the link in the chat. That would have how you contact me. It has the link to buy the devotional. It also has link, I think, for the morning journal, for kind of prioritizing tasks
Okay.
and all of that, and a coaching notebook as well. So,
Oh, wonderful. Okay,
so
we
all
we
of
got a bundle. You got a bundle
yeah.
going on.
So, yes, the link has all the ways that you can get in touch with me, but I'm also Kim Sims MD on Instagram. I'm Kim Sims MD on Facebook. And so if you connect with me there, then you would be able to connect.
Okay. All right. Dr. Kimberly Sims, Houston, Texas. It has been such a delight to talk to you today, and just really embrace all these tips, embrace your journey on helping us to get and stay connected to ourselves and stay connected to our truth. I appreciate you so very much.
Oh,
And
it's been a pleasure. It's always a pleasure talking to
yes, 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 yes. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Get the Backstory Live. And you got the backstory tonight. You got a full story tonight. And we hope that this conversation has been beneficial, has been useful, and you got some good armoring up to help move you through your, not just your day, not just through the week, but through the rest of your life on this journey.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us.
What does it mean to get the backstory? It means asking the hard questions and getting to the heart of what matters about your mental, spiritual, financial, and physical well-being. In my quest to find wholeness, wellness, and end the 40 years of obesity that ravaged my body, I found that it was my own stories that were keeping me trapped in processed food addiction. Once I started asking the right questions, those same stories led to brand new consciousness, mindfulness, and agency. Each month on Get the Backstory Live, we take on the tough questions so you can find the healing, hope, and transformation hidden in your story.